Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel for another midweek mystery video, where today I want to bring your attention to the story of Diane Augat. This is a really classic unsolved mystery with so many layers, so many strange details, and so many unanswered questions. For reasons which I'm sure will become clear, it could be easy just to brush Diane's case under the carpet, but there are so many elements of her story which make it clear that this was not an accident. Something happened to Diane. Diane was born on the 21st of February 1958, which would make her 62 years old if she's alive today. When she went missing on the 10th of April 1998, she was 40 years old. She's missing from Odessa, Florida, where she lived at 1700 Chesapeake Drive, although it seems at the time of her disappearance she may have been staying with her sister Deborah on Cobblestone Drive in Hudson. Diane was 5'4" and 130 pounds, a Caucasian female with dark blonde or red hair and blue eyes. She had pierced ears, tattoos on her back and right shoulder, she had a scar on her abdomen from appendix surgery, and she may have occasionally used the name Diane Young, her maiden name. At the time of her disappearance, she's wearing a white tank top, blue shorts, white tennis shoes, and coral-coloured nail polish. A decade earlier, Diane was a housewife with a husband and 3 children. Family say she kept an immaculate home, she loved camping, fishing and music, and enjoyed going on trips with her family, boating and camping. She lived a very good life. But then in the late 80s she got diagnosed with bipolar disorder and was placed on medication to keep her under control. She did not have her medication on her at the time she went missing and may not have been taking it for a while. For those of you who aren't sure, bipolar disorder is a mental disorder characterised by periods of depression and abnormally elevated moods. It can cause people to become manic, periods in which people are abnormally energetic and happy, sleep becomes elusive, and then this is followed by a period of deep depression. It's also sometimes known as manic depression. For the most part, bipolar can be treated with mood stabilising medication, but as with most medications, it's only effective if you're actually taking it, and Diane would regularly stop. When she didn't take her medication correctly, her personality would change, and she was known during these bouts to hang out with a pretty rough crowd. Diane also battled with drug addiction and alcoholism. Her mum, Mildred Young, has said that Diane was a very trusting person, was often drawn to men with money, men with the means to take care of her. She had also disappeared before an occasion, but her previous disappearances only ever lasted a day or two. Her mum, Mildred Young, has said that Diane was a very trusting person and she was often drawn to men with money, men with the means to take care of her. She had also disappeared before an occasion, but her previous disappearances only ever lasted a day or two. She always came back. In 1988, Diane's children, 2 daughters and a son, had been removed from her custody, and in 1991 she divorced from her husband. It seems like her life went downhill from there. She went on to be arrested several times for petty crimes and was taken into custody under the state's Baker Act at least 32 times. Florida's Baker Act allows the involuntary institutionalization and examination of individuals where there is evidence of them having a mental illness and that they are in danger of becoming a harm to themselves, others, or is self-neglectful. A judge, police officer or doctor has the power to decide whether a person is ill enough to require an involuntary medical exam. Basically, it doesn't have to be an individual or a family member to put someone forward for an examination. Individuals can be involuntarily detained for up to 72 hours, and if they're not discharged within that time, the facility can ask for the patient's consent to continue their commitment voluntarily, or they can file a petition through the circuit court for involuntary placement. This happened to Diane 32 times. The last time was just a number of weeks before she disappeared. Family members think that she should never have been released that last time, her mother saying that Diane deeply needed institutionalised care. She wasn't in a good mental place at the time of her disappearance, and it was at this point that she went to stay with her sister Deborah in Hudson, about 20 miles northwest of Odessa. It was April 10th, Good Friday, when Diane disappeared. Deborah last saw her around 11 AM that morning, and at some point Diane left the house. She was last seen that day at the Hayloft Tavern at Little Road and State Road 52, approximately 3 miles away from Deborah's home. Diane didn't have a car, so she either walked, hitchhiked, or got a lift with friends as she usually did. Seeing as no friends have ever said they gave her a lift that day, the latter is probably unlikely, but then again, so is this entire case. Eventually, the bartender stopped serving Diane drinks that day because of her strange behaviour. Apparently, she was literally walking around in circles. The next day, April 11th, Diane was seen by a witness walking north on US 19. There are also some reports that she was seen at the Coral Sands Motel on US 19 and Maryland Avenue at some point over the next couple of days. She was reported as missing by Mildred, her mother, on the 11th. There was no news of Diane for a few days until a very strange phone call on the 14th. It was to Mildred's house phone, but she was out at the time, so the call went to voicemail. A fairly short message was left, a woman's voice saying, "Help, help." Mildred identified the voice as her daughter's. Then there's a scuffling sound as if somebody was trying to grab the phone from Diane's hands. She says, "Hey, gimme that," then the call ends. The number on the caller ID said the call came from something called Starlight, but when the family tried to call the number back, no one answered. I attempted to do some research online about businesses in the Odessa area under the name Starlight, but as you can imagine, most of today's Google search answers aren't relevant to 1998. I would like to assume that if this was a lead that could have been followed at the time, then it would have been, but I don't think the Pasco County Sheriff's Office have ever really put that much effort into this case. Medium.com states there are at least 6 businesses with the name Starlight within a 45-mile radius, but none of these were actually in Odessa. Take that with a pinch of salt though, because I was unable to verify the information. Earlier that same day, on the 14th, a waitress at the Inn on the Gulf in Hudson reported seeing Diane there eating lunch. This is thought to be the last confirmed sighting of Diane, and it seems like something very bad happened to her after this point if the voicemail is anything to go by. And from here on out, her story just gets weirder. The very next day, April 15th, a woman was walking to work near the intersection of US Highway 19 and New York Avenue in Hudson. She spotted a severed finger, coral-painted fingernail included. She saw it and thought it was a fake finger at first or some kind of joke. Not knowing what to do, she went home and told her boyfriend about it, so the next day he went looking and found the finger again and contacted the police. The finger had been removed from just above the knuckle, and some reports say there was a second finger observed at the scene, but only one was recovered. I wish I had information for you as to whether this finger had been cut off very cleanly or if it was a messy break. This case is particularly frustrating because the information I could find online is quite sporadic. I can find a lot of the basics about Diane's story, with more intricate details simply aren't covered. I assume they identified the finger as being Diane through fingerprints, as she'd been arrested multiple times, so they would have had her information on the system. Diane's finger being found was the first time the authorities seemed to accept that something more had happened to Diane than just her deciding to wander off. This was a clue that foul play may have been involved in her disappearance. But why? Was Diane involved in some things that nobody knew about, or did she just run into the wrong person at the wrong time? Or had her mental health got so bad that she cut her own finger off, or was it all a big accident? The loss of a finger likely wouldn't lead to death, so they operated under the possibility that she could still be alive. My biggest question is how on earth did a finger manage to remain outside, at least overnight, if not for longer, without getting eaten or taken by some kind of animal in Florida? The finger can't have been there for long because it was still in pretty good condition. A few days after the finger was found, a tip came in that some of her possessions had been stolen and moved out of her home, the home that she hadn't been living in at the time. Before she disappeared, Diane had apparently been allowing people to hold parties there, and as we know, Diane didn't exactly run in the best circles when her mental health was bad. And then, about a week after her finger was found, there was yet another strange turn in the case, when a bag of Diane's neatly folded clothes was found in an Odessa convenience store's outdoor freezer. It was totally convenient at 14530 State Road 54. The store manager, Patricia Splendorio, was the one to find the clothes, and immediately raised a concern that they may have belonged to Diane, who I can only assume frequented the store often. The manager called Deborah, who confirmed that they definitely did belong to Diane. They were some of the clothes that she'd given her. Patricia said that the last time she checked the case was 3 weeks before the clothes were found, meaning they may well have been placed there whilst Diane was still alive, or at least not missing. There's no way of knowing which, and the police took the clothes into evidence. The sheriff's spokesman said the clothes may have been placed there by juveniles who'd hung out with Diane at her home, the same people who were suspected of looting the place after her disappearance. But why would they take her clothes, neatly fold them, and then seemingly hide them in the outdoor freezer of a convenience store? Is it more likely that Diane hid them there, emergency clothing, in a moment of mania? Had she planned to go missing and knew that she might need extra clothes? I told you there are a lot of strange things happening with this case, and no answers, despite the Pasco County Sheriff's Office questioning over 100 people in relation. For 2 years, nothing more happens in this case. No more clues, and no more leads for the police to follow. Eventually, Diane's case takes a back seat, written off as a person with poor mental health and a history of drug abuse and alcoholism, which could possibly have been the case, of course, but I'm not sure that means that she deserves any less of an investigation. Surely that puts her at more risk than somebody without those factors involved. But of course, the story doesn't quite end there. 2 years later, in the year 2000, the girlfriend of Diane's brother, Terry Wilson, was in a convenience store called Circle K, where she came across a Ziploc bag on the counter with the name Diane written on it in marker. Inside it was a pink lipstick in a tube, eyeliner, Taboo brand perfume, and a tube of generic toothpaste, the same brand that Diane would have received from the mental health facility she was in just a few weeks before she disappeared. Mildred has confirmed that these are similar items to what Diane would have used, but there's nothing more than that to suggest that these were definitely Diane's belongings. But it is strange that her essential sister-in-law should be the one to come across this, just a Ziploc bag lying on a store counter with the name Diane written across it. Once again, there are multiple questions here. If this did belong to Diane, how did it just appear 2 years later? And how did it just so happen that Diane's sister-in-law was the one who found it? Was someone still trying to mess with the family? Was it someone at the convenience store that was involved? Some even speculate that the family placed it there themselves to bring police and public attention back to the case, reignite it. People can't believe that something this random, this much of a coincidence could have happened. If this is the case, then good on them, I think. From what I can gather, the Police County Sheriff's Office has been less than helpful in this case, particularly in recent years, so why not try and gain as much attention as possible? Diane was a daughter, a sister, a mother. Her family deserve answers as to what happened to her. But then again, this might not be the case, and maybe this did just appear on a counter. The final piece of information I have for you in this case comes from 2001. It seems that another witness eventually came forward saying they spotted Diane at the Coral Sands Motel shortly before her disappearance. On the 11th, she'd been seen walking on US 19 and Coral Sands Motel was on US 19, so it adds up. Bear with me whilst I explain to you some seemingly unrelated event because it all does tie in. So it was the early morning, 4 AM on a Friday towards the end of June in 2001, when two men wearing black ski masks and carrying guns burst into the office of the Coral Sands Motel. Coral Sands was managed by Gary Robert Evers and his girlfriend, Rose Casper. Rose was in the office when these men broke in and they began to beat her. Alerted by the noise, Gary comes in from the back bedroom. It was a sort of mobile home situation and the men quickly fled. Gary was furious. So just before midnight on the following Thursday, he confronts a 26-year-old man called Todd Kramers, who he believed to be involved in the attack. Gary invited Todd into the motel office and pulled out a 9mm pistol. He shot Todd multiple times, firing the entire magazine at him, putting in a new magazine and emptying that as well. A lot of gunshots. Todd died and Gary was soon arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Todd had an extensive criminal record including burglary, battery in law enforcement, and selling and possession of marijuana. Gary Evers himself didn't have any criminal record in Florida, although in October 1999 deputies did respond to a call of aggravated assault at the motel including Gary, but no charges were ever filed. The obvious implication here is that Diane was apparently last seen at the Coral Sands Motel and the manager is later found to be a murderer. Could he be involved? Deborah actually did an interview with the St. Petersburg Times where she said that a detective had called her to let her know that Evers, who was reportedly a long-time suspect in Diane's case, had been arrested, although Pasco County Sheriff's officials had no comment on this. Of course though, investigators were never able to make a strong connection with Gary and Diane. As far as I'm aware, all they had was that he was the manager of the dodgy motel where Diane was reportedly seen at after she'd gone missing. If the police had more than that on him, it's not public knowledge as far as I can see. Gary is still considered a suspect, but it doesn't seem like he's ever going to go anywhere. This is a man who shot someone who he mistakenly thought to be involved in an attack on his girlfriend, which is a far cry from abducting and torturing someone cutting off their finger. Unless the police know something that we don't know. I can't help but get the feeling with this case that there's a lot of information that the police either aren't releasing or that they simply don't have. It just stinks of a poor investigation. I don't understand how the caller ID was never traced in this case. I don't understand how there are so many potential sightings of Diane in the following days, but nobody's ever been able to trace her. If it wasn't for the phone call and the finger, you could be mistaken for thinking this case was a runaway. With Diane's mental health issues and addiction, it wouldn't be crazy to think that she would run and perhaps end up in a sticky situation. Some even think that she may have committed suicide, which is unlikely at this point as the body hasn't been discovered in 22 years, but not impossible. The finger and the panic phone call allude to someone else being involved in her disappearance. Definite foul play. Why was the finger found where it was? Was that where Diane had been when her finger was removed, for want of a better word, or was the finger placed there afterwards in the hope that someone would find it? It wasn't exactly hidden. Did somebody leave it there wanting it to be found? The clothes found in the freezer may have been there before her disappearance, and the bag of toiletries has many a question mark hovering over it. But the finger was definitely something that happened after she went missing, as was the phone call. There is not a doubt in my mind that somebody else was involved in Diane's disappearance. Whether they helped her stage a disappearance at her request or abducted and hurt her. Perhaps a random person grabbed her off the street, or perhaps she was in debt to people, owed someone something. I don't want to speculate too much about Diane's state of mind at the time of her disappearance, as I'm not an expert on bipolar disorder, but I don't think it particularly matters as to the outcome of this investigation. The bottom line is that a mentally ill woman went missing and the authorities seemingly failed her. I just feel like so much more could have been done in this case. There are so many leads to follow. There's something more in this case. Someone was involved. Perhaps Diane was involved with people a lot dodgier than anyone realised. Anyone with information about what happened to Diane Augat is asked to contact the Pasco County Sheriff's Office. I'll leave all the contact details in the description box down below. There is a reward of up to $3,000 for anyone with information leading to answers about Diane's disappearance. I know her family are still desperate for answers. They're still searching for her. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.